Maygen.
Sheila.
Hopefully I wasn't fangirling too much in this episode.
I like it when you fangirl.
There's too many people.
You fangirled when we had Lindsay and Leslie on our very first episode.
That's true. That was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, how time flies.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this episode, if you like innovation,
yes,
if you like community investments,
yes,
if you like delicious baked goods,
yes,
if you like food equality,
yes,
this is the episode for you.
Yeah, we had a very special person stop by today, Lauren, who is the founder of Grain Bakery here in downtown Snohomish, and she walked through her journey, which was so inspirational.
Yeah,
the way from her cottage kitchen to the brick and mortar here in downtown Snohomish, and doing all that while, single parenting, hustling at farmers markets.
Kids was strapped on her back, literally.
Yeah, it was amazing to hear the journey that she went through to get to this place where now she is able to be a community leader and do all of the other things that she wants to do in the community.
Yeah, she is a smart and scrappy person. And it was really fun to hear her story and how strategic she's been. I loved when she kind of identified that she couldn't always know exactly how to get to point B, but she knew that point B was there and she was going to figure it out. And she just keeps doing that. It's very impressive.
So hopefully everyone enjoys this episode with Lauren from Grain. Well, Maygen.
Sheila.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, another wonderful day in the podcast studio.
Yeah. And welcome to June.
Yeah. Oh, don't even remind me. My brain is still in February, maybe March at best. I am not ready for June. Not ready at all.
Summer is almost here.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is. It's actually really funny that who we're recording with today, because it came up in conversation with a coworker of mine this week.
Oh, yeah?
Naturally, unprompted. Yeah, but I was talking to my coworker about the Snohomish Farmers Market. Shout out to Sarah Dillon Jensen, and how great it is. And I was like, yeah. And then right across from the Snohomish Farmers Market, we have this really great bakery that's a gluten-free bakery. And that even though I'm not gluten-free, my husband's not gluten-free, we love going to this bakery because they just have really good stuff. And then they're like, wait, what's the name of it? And I was like, it's Grain. And they're like, wait a second, I know. And they live down in the city, right? So I was not expecting them to know Seattle.
Oh, the big
city.
That city.
Right. And I was like, yeah, it's Grain. And they're like, wait a second, I know that place. I've been to that place. And I was like, what a small world.
But it's regionally popular.
It is very
they've
regionally popular. So welcome to today's podcast, the founder of Grain Artisan Bakery.
Yes.
Yeah, Lauren, the star of Grain. Welcome.
Yes,
thanks for being here.
For having me.
Yeah,
we're very excited.
We are. I am a personal fan of you and your bakery because I am gluten intolerant. And so when you opened up your storefront, I was like, how lucky am I that right here in my tiny little small town is a dedicated gluten-free bakery. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. And we hang out there all the time.
We do. That's our place.
Yeah.
So Lauren, we would love to hear a little bit about your story. Did you grow up in Snohomish or did you come to Snohomish from another area?
Yes. First, I moved from Indiana out to Washington. I graduated high school in 2011 and I went to University of Findlay in Ohio for a year. And I wanted to kind of figure out if that was the path I really wanted to go down or not. And so I got into the internship program as a sophomore and set up a working student position out here and moved south of Seattle down in between Auburn and Enumclaw. For a working student position, I was riding horses and learning how to train professionally. That was my goal.
Wow.
Right.
So that's what I moved out here for. And I moved out here and I stayed at that farm for about 4.5 months before moving into downtown Seattle. And really loved it out here a lot more than I did back home. And so I ended up staying out here. So I'm not from here originally, but this is, I guess that was summer of 2012. So it's 13 years this summer that I'll be out here. I started baking in 2015 for my son's first birthday party. He was dairy intolerant since birth and gluten intolerant from about the time that we started him on solids. And so I baked somewhat out of financial necessity.
Yeah.
Because at that time, a decade ago, gluten and dairy-free stuff was a lot more expensive than it even is now.
Yes.
And I didn't have any money left in the party budget because I had gone a little overboard. And so, yeah, I baked a smash cake for him, cupcakes for the adults, and everyone loved it. And I started baking on the side and learned about the Cottage Foods program that the WSDA runs, and got my WSDA Cottage Foods permit and did that for several years. And then grew out of that, rented a commercial kitchen that was a shared space in Redmond, and then rented my own commercial kitchen space. I called it my Hobbit hole lovingly. It was very tiny, like less than 300 square feet, but I didn't have to share it. It was all mine, but it was in Seattle. And then the pandemic hit, and the Spadas approached me and let me know that they were buying the building and asked if I was still interested in my own storefront space. And I was like, heck yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, we signed the lease. I signed the lease July 1st of 2020 and launched a Kickstarter that was super successful. We're very grateful for our community's support, and opened November of 2020. So
wow.
Yeah, that's kind of like the short version of our story. But
I was going to say, thanks for being here today. That's
Yeah, I actually remember that Kickstarter because Trent and I actually contributed to that too, because we were so excited that you guys were coming into town that we're like, we want to make sure that she's here. So we're like, we're doing everything we can. And I forgot what the treat was that we got out of it. But it was just like super exciting. And I felt like it was very much like a community thing that like people come to Snohomish for, right? These are like the community efforts that we love this community for. So that was very exciting. Now that you mention it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that Kickstarter.
Cool. Yeah.
So what was your connection to the Spada family? Because if you were living in downtown Seattle, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
How did you get connected to? How did you kind of branch into the Snohomish region?
Yeah, so I mean, that was like a decade condensed.
I
guess that's fair.
We have extra time. You can tell us more.
When I moved into downtown Seattle, I was still riding. I was competing on the North American Junior Young Rider Circuit for dressage. And that was before I had my son, Caden. And then after I had him, I quit that path. It was way too financially heavy with money that I didn't have.
Yeah, courses.
And so, I picked school back up and was doing school more heavily, and was kind of balancing the school and the business, especially as I became a single mom after he was about 2. And that was kind of a balance. And so I was living in Woodinville around the time that I became a single mom, and then moved up to Snohomish for a while before moving to my first apartment with him in the Linwood, Martha Lake area. And that is where I had my Cottage Foods permit. And Snohomish Market was the first farmers market that I did. I want to say it was 2016, but it might have been 2015 was the first summer that I did the Snohomish Farmers Market. I did a lot of stuff in this community with my son before that. And a lot of his dad's family was based in this area. And so I was just familiar with the area, and I really liked the market. And so that's kind of what got me into it. And I just really loved the area. And so over the years, I had way back when it was Pacific Northwest Cupcakes, I would do beer and cupcake pairings and wine and cupcake pairings.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. And so that's how I met the Spadas initially, was when I was doing that.
Gotcha.
Back when they were in, I think it's what is now Piccola Pizza, or right around in that area. I forgot exactly what unit was them. But when they had just the tiny itty bitty brewery.
Yes, I know.
Right.
That's the John L. Scott place, right?
I
forgot about that.
Yes. I remember going there with Rich.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
I can picture it now.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, that's when I met them initially. And they're just a really great family. And so they knew I had started the search for my own space before finding my little Hobbit hole kitchen in Seattle through a previous wedding client. I had been looking for a space in Snohomish for a couple of years prior to opening the storefront, and had a couple unfortunate things fall through. And they knew about that, and they knew that I was looking. And so when they decided to buy that building, they reached out to me and said, there's a possibility we'll have a unit coming up.
Wow.
Are you interested? And I was like, heck yeah.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Relationships really pay off when you're trying to advance I mean, really anything.
Also,
but
the power of
especially in
community.
business. Yeah.
Right? It's who you know sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it sounds like from what you shared that you started off selling direct to consumers, maybe through events like weddings, but also the farmers market.
Mm-hmm.
Were you selling primarily at the Snohomish Farmers Market, or were you doing multiple markets? Like, sounds like you were just hustling around.
I was, yeah. It was a lot of hustle. Yeah, I mean, it's still definitely a lot of hustle, but it was like Snohomish Farmers Market. And then I think it was about 9 months after, like the first season of Snohomish Farmers Market that I did, that I started the Capitol Hill Farmers Market in Seattle, because we've been there one less year than Snohomish. And so and that's a year-round market. And that really helped a lot as well, get our name out there, because the Seattle markets are bigger and they're year-round. Those two opportunities really helped kind of ground my clientele base. And so it was direct to consumer, either through the farmers market or people placing direct orders with me for custom orders for birthday cakes or anniversaries, or maybe someone needed cupcakes for their kid's school party or birthday party or whatnot, and weddings. Weddings, I kind of niched in on right away because I knew that like those would bring me bigger orders, larger orders, which meant more income coming in. And so I started out with the Snohomish Wedding Tour. This is either my 10th or 11th year with the Snohomish Wedding Guild. And I started that, I believe I started it the same summer that I started Snohomish Farmers Market, and kind of immediately niched into that. It was a lot of hustle for a long while there, because you really, without having a storefront or somewhere consistent where people can find you, you have to work extra hard, especially if it's your sole income, to be bringing in customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So were you doing all of this by yourself at this point? When did you start bringing in
employees?
Help?
I think it was 2017 or 2018 that I hired my first employee. I don't know. It was one of those 2 years, but it was in the kitchen that I was working in Redmond. It was actually Lisa Dupar Catering, Pomegranate Bistro in Redmond. Their pastry room, I would rent it in the afternoon and evening hours after their pastry team was done by 2 or 3. Really great experience. Taught me a lot about the kitchen. It was the first professional kitchen like I ever worked in. I wasn't working for them, but I was just being immersed in that environment was extremely educational for me. And just learning how a kitchen flows, because I had never had a food industry job, period, before starting this. And so I feel like that's my only real food industry experience. And it wasn't even direct, it was indirect. So it was when I was working there, I hired my first person to help me very part-time, like weekends only, to help me with like baker's assistant stuff. And then I ended up hiring someone that ended up being my next baker's assistant, who actually transitioned into my client coordinator, who helped with run my holiday pre-orders, like help systemize it, and then like do help with the emails with custom orders. And she's like evolved throughout the years, helping with different aspects. She's still with me. We actually just went backwards to figure out when she actually started, and it was fall of 2018.
Wow.
Her name's Rachel. And so now she just does wedding coordinating for us, and she still helps run payroll, which is like a random thing that she still holds. But so those baker's assistants were my first employees. And once I was in my own Hobbit Hole kitchen in Seattle, then I hired people to help me with markets as well. Because I literally, for a lot of it, had my son on my back in a Tula toddler carrier. He is much different than my 2-year-old that I have now, who would not want to be on my back in a carrier for a whole market. But he was really great patience-wise. And it was a lot of hustle. And I was a single mom for the majority of that up until 3.5, 4 years ago. So
man,
that
so
is
you
a
were
lot.
like living in one city, you had your kitchen in another city, and you were selling basically all across like
the region,
the Puget Sound area.
Yeah, because I also did like urban craft uprising stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with
Magnuson Park.
Yeah, they do some stuff at Magnuson Park and throughout the city. They're super awesome. And those events helped catapult me as well, because they're like concentrated 3-day events with like premier vendors, like handpicked to be in there after you apply. And so it was a lot of like going around and trying to get my name out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I was wondering if you would share a little bit more about, you mentioned all the education you got working in a real commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
what are the differences between like kind of that cottage licensing versus when you're working in a commercial kitchen? And then how did that help inform the operation that you have now? Because just from seeing the postings that you do for like Help Wanted, you have a lot of different positions that average person like me doesn't understand why those things are essential for you to run your business. Did that help inform the, I guess, like business plan and strategy that you have that's working for you now?
Oh man, that's a loaded question.
It is. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So like as a cottage foods person, like you're doing it yourself. I don't know what the rules or laws are now because I don't follow the cottage foods program now. Back then when I was doing it, my understanding of it then is like it was supposed to just be you because like there's a gross sales cap on the cottage foods program where you can't sell above X amount, which again, I don't know what it is right now because I don't follow it, but X amount per year in gross sales is your cap. And the point of the cottage foods program is to kind of be an incubator program for people to get their feet wet and figure out how to make something bigger work, or for people that just really enjoy baking for friends and family from home and want to make some money on the side. It's not meant to be like a making all the stuff at home.
Right.
And so they come out and inspect you at least once a year. Back when I was doing it, I think it started with one time a year and then they ended up like changing the program and it ended up being twice a year. I don't know what it is now, but they come out and inspect and like they still hold you to similar, like everything has to be stored correctly. Everything has to be stored separately than your home stuff. So like your fridge, you have to have either a dedicated fridge or dedicated shelving. Same thing in your pantry, either like dedicated pantry area or dedicated shelving. It has to be labeled accurately. Like everything has to be stored cleanly. You have to be able to like prove if you have kids or pets specifically. They outline like what you have to be able to prove as far as keeping the place sanitary and clean and like not getting dog and cat hair and things.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's like a looser intro version of like a commercial license. But I mean, I think anyone that's done cottage foods that's stepped into something bigger will say like it's a whole new ballpark. I will say I think it would probably be easier if you had any sort of food industry experience. I'm really glad that I was able to rent the space I was because I wasn't working for them, but like I was working while the rest of the pastry team or the final few people were cleaning up. They would often let me come over a little early if they were wrapping up early, or if they were wrapping up late, I was still allowed to come over at my time. But at the same time, like in that kitchen especially, like it was really an incredible opportunity because not only is there the pastry room, but like I'm getting to experience their whole line cook station, their whole catering section, their whole prep section. If you've ever been to Pomegranate Bistro and looked through the pastry room glass windows, it is the largest commercial kitchen I have ever seen in my life. And so I really got exposed to all of it, including the catering and high-end aspect of it, even their dish pit and the way their dish pit worked. Like the way they store their tools and utensils and Cambros to their freezer and fridges and how they use them. Just like doing my stuff, doing my gig. Keeping my eyes and my ears open and learning and watching. Absorbing all of that. I probably couldn't put to words or pen to paper or whatnot what it taught me, but I know it taught me a lot. Especially not having any food industry experience. And then that was able to transition into my own small place where I was like, okay, I know how stuff needs to function now. And then I also found like, oh, like shoot, this should be functioning this way, but I'm clearly missing a step because I'm missing something because it's not. And then, but then it, like I knew what it should look like or how the process should
look
be.
like at least.
That's cool because you went from unknown unknowns to known unknowns because you're like, that's not supposed to be that way. But like if you knew absolutely nothing, if you didn't have the chance to observe, you'd just be like going on your merry way to be like, this seems right.
Or be frustrated that like something's not lining up, but you don't know exactly what it is.
That's amazing.
I really feel like that was a really unique experience renting the pastry room after hours, because to tie into what you said about like the job postings and formulating structure, like I knew that we would need dish people. I knew that we would need baristas, like when we first opened. I knew we would need dish crew. I knew we would need baristas. I knew that we needed back of house people, but it became very apparent very quickly after we opened, like we needed prep bakers, which we call baker's assistants, and we needed bakers, like the people that were pulling the heavy weight, that had the skill set and technique to mix and bake the things. But that person didn't need to be doing the simpler tasks of more intro level tasks of like scaling the recipe and scaling the ingredients or wrapping things up. And so it became apparent very quickly like where we had to fill holes. And so it definitely, like, that experience definitely helped give me a good baseline, and also like reference throughout the last 5.5 years of being open. Like, I still talk about that experience and be like, okay, well, I remember like if we're launching something new or launching a new system, like I remember it worked really well there. Like they have their stuff dialed in there. Like they call their Thanksgiving thing their turkey a go-go. And it is wild the amount of Thanksgiving dinners that place pumps out, and like the caliber of events. I mean, they cater a lot of Bill Gates's stuff.
Wow.
And so like being exposed to all of that, just like I was able to see like really well done systems.
You learned from the best. That's
learned
cool.
from the best. And I had no clue like how great of an experience that was going to be, or how long lasting it was. So it definitely like played a part in it, but it's also been, we've kind of tried to develop what fill the holes where we see them and where we're needing them, and just growing and launching new products. Like even in the last 6 months, we've realized we're making so much sourdough. And we're like, okay, we need to start designating one of our bakers every day needs to be designated in a AM bread baker position rather than just having them on the schedule as a baker. Like we need to know that this person, they're going to be bowling bread for hours. They're going to be bowling and baking bread. And so like as we grow and as some of the things become bigger projects and longer, like more recurring weekly task projects, we're kind of creating as we go, but there's definitely like there's some heavy influence from outside places. And my Hobbit Hole kitchen was also like, that was a kitchen underneath it's Sorrel in Seattle, who actually Aaron Chicolve, he's the chef. I did he and his wife's wedding cake years ago. They were one of my first wedding clients.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It is. And he's actually up for a James Beard Award. Like he made it through finals. I don't know where that's at, so maybe I missed the finals, but his restaurant is incredible. And so even though I was down below and they rarely came down there and I rarely went up, like just seeing how he operated into the caliber that he was operating, like I feel like
letting the energy permeate.
Yeah, definitely did.
But
and so
it's good to see like what is possible, right? Like you are seeing the biggest end of the spectrum and the caliber that they were doing, the size that they were doing. Because I can see how if you were getting taught or getting visibility of something that's just slightly above where you were, I'm sure that would have taught you something, but it probably wouldn't have opened your eyes to like as much of what you've learned now. Yeah. Because it's like you were small fish, big pond, but if you were big fish in a small pond, you wouldn't know like, oh, this is where the aspirational point. That's
something
amazing.
to look towards.
Or if you're stuck in something and if you're big fish, small pond, like if you're stuck in something, you sometimes, especially if you don't have industry experience, like you don't know where to go with it. But I might not know how to get from point A to point B, but like I know that point B is over there, and like I think this is the route we need to go, and then we figure out how to get there, type of thing.
I think you really just summarized, or at least what I know of you, is that, and especially learning a little bit more with what you've shared, that you didn't have like this baking background. It's something that you started and you figured it out as you went, and then you were able to adapt and kind of say, oh, I want to get to point B. How can I get there? But you're very thoughtful about it. And I've always appreciated that you're always scaling up to the next thing with intention, and that you do it in a way that you share that with the community. And I think that creates, at least in me for sure, it creates even more buy-in into your business and your product, because I feel like I'm part of it in some silly way. But it's not like I influence it all, but just you sharing it, it makes me more interested in what you're doing, especially because like what you said earlier, when you were like, I want to make sure this happens with the Kickstarter. I want to make sure it stays.
You're like, the one bread I can eat.
I love that Lauren's always thinking about it and she's always working on the next thing and she wants to be around long term. You know, I have a personal selfish investment in that. But I do appreciate that you share the process because it's so fascinating. It's interesting. And we can see you working not just in your business, but on your business. And I think that is really the key to not just scaling and growth, but just longevity, you know?
Yeah. I think one of the things that really stands out to me, I think I've seen a couple posts throughout the years ever since your brick and mortar opened of like, hey guys, I'm having to increase prices because this. And having that relationship or what feels like a relationship. I know you don't know who I was before this, but, being like, oh, I understand. Like Lauren's going through this. She's trying to do this. Cost of everything has gone up. And like, the buy-in. And I think that's a model that a lot of businesses are starting to really tap into when they're realizing, especially small businesses, we are buying into Lauren and the bakery, obviously. But like the more you get your customers involved with your process and who you are, the more invested and the more willing they are to be like, okay, couple extra bucks, but I'm willing to do it.
Because you know what you're getting.
Exactly. And you know where the money's going. And you know that they're not just lining their pockets with corporate, like mega profits. So I think that's a great model that you've exemplified in the way you're running your business.
It's just honesty, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what people value about small business and just being in a community like Snohomish where it's Main Street, right? That's just kind of the nature of it. So what have you found to be, I mean, I know you've only had your storefront in downtown Snohomish. You haven't had another storefront, right? Yeah. What have you found to be like the most valuable and the most challenging things about doing business in a community like this?
I mean, challenging, everyone knows everyone.
It's a double-edged sword, right?
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, and I guess like the challenge of that is like, I'm a pretty introverted person. If someone comes up to me and starts a conversation, I'm good to go. But like, I don't like initiating conversations. And so like, that's where it's like everyone knows everyone and whatnot. But this community is really special. And I have found that for the most part, most of the people here really do care. And if you give them the opportunity to learn and understand, they take it. They buy into it. And that is something that's been super important to me from the get-go. I mean, you can trace it back well before the pandemic, before the storefront with my social media. Like, I really value transparency across the board. It's something that I preach to my employees and my staff as well. Like, transparency is everything. Like, if we can't have an honest conversation about it, how is anything going to go anywhere? And with the transparency as far as like from the business for the customer, it's pretty apparent in most aspects, and I'll try not to go down a rabbit hole with this, of like where we're at as a society, that oftentimes there's a very big disconnect between the consumer and the product. Often in small businesses, it's worse because larger businesses can cut things in certain areas to bring the price down. But because of the way things are set up, like small businesses don't have that opportunity that big businesses do. So it hits the hardest for small businesses. And there's a disconnect, especially when people haven't worked in a service-based or even like product-based business, small business. There's just a disconnect of not understanding what goes into it cost-wise. And from the get-go, someone had told me like way back when I was P&W Cupcakes, like make sure you cost. Like, yes, you're brand new. Yes, you've only been in business a year or two. Make sure you cost your stuff and cost it regularly and do not undersell your stuff because if you undersell yourself, you're going to get screwed really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that. I took that advice and I've done that as often as I've been able to or had to. And it became apparent very quickly that like there was a disconnect, especially for small food businesses specifically. We have the slimmest margins, much slimmer than any retail-based product business that I've ever known an owner of. Like, food industry margins are slim. And so But customers don't understand that all the time, and they don't understand what all goes into it. And until you break that down and help people understand, like, I try not to come at it from like a shaming educational point of view, because that doesn't help anyone. But I try and, like, the chocolate croissant example from last year is always, everyone always brings that one up, and they're like, that's an awesome way to do it. And when I proposed that idea, a couple people were like, no, Lauren, like, this is too much. Just make a decision and run with it. And I was like, no, like, I'm doing it for the people. I'm doing it for the customers. They love them. I don't know which route to pick. And I would rather ask my people, see what they want, and go with it. And that's the kind of stuff that people really appreciate. And I hope that more businesses start doing more of it, because it truly helps. It helps the customers understand. It helps your people understand.
You're right. And I love that you approach it from the educational standpoint, because it's transparency, but it's also helpful to understand why behind it. Because I think if you go about it the wrong way, it can sound shameful.
Yeah.
And I think your wording is important, but also because you've built that relationship just through how you've curated your brand and how you've even just represented yourself on social media, which is funny that it's a thing, but it's a thing now. The way that you present yourself there is how people are interpreting you, you know, outside of the time that they spend in your business. And the way that you've established that relationship, I think, is that foundation so that you can continue the transparency and the educational side of things. But that's like what I said originally, that kind of sustains that loyalty and that relationship, because I already felt like it was there. It's like you said, I know that you didn't meet me until today, but I feel like I know you and your business because you've built that. And I think that's really impressive, and you should be proud of it.
Thank you. I don't take it lightly.
Do you feel that connection with the folks that are here in the Snohomish community where your brick and mortar is? Or do you also see that connection with the folks that may be going to, you know, where your farmers markets are at, like down in the city as well?
I know this is like the Snohomish podcast, but
we can talk about other things.
We 100% feel it across. I mean, we have so many regulars, and I'm curious to see, like, with the tracking stuff that HDSA is able to do, like, how this reflects. But we have so many people that regularly drive from Seattle every week to our shop. There's certain days that we know we have certain regulars that come in from Seattle. Honestly, our Capitol Hill crew of regulars, about 75-ish% of the people that show up to Capitol Hill Market every Sunday, they are there every Sunday year round. And if we don't see them, we're like, ooh, hopefully he's okay. Or like maybe he's on vacation. And like those people, they are ride or die, and they are there every week.
Love it.
Like they are our most loyal. Like every week they're there. So we do kind of see it across the board, and I'm very grateful for that, because it extends beyond Snohomish, and also brings those people into Snohomish, which is really nice.
That's what I was just going to say. I love that. Yeah. I love that we have certain points here, like Snohomish Pie Company is another place that people come from far away for, because they're, you know, famously known. And I understand driving for something gluten-free. That's why I said I felt so spoiled that it's right here in my town. When my son was gluten-free, dairy-free, all the things when he was little as well. That's how I learned about all of this. And then later my own journey was like, oh, I don't feel good either. I wonder if this has something to do with it. But we would go down to the Flying Apron. Do you remember that place in Fremont? Yeah. And we lived in Edmonds, so it wasn't super far. But if the kid wanted a treat to be able to have, you know, in preschool when it's someone else's birthday, we would just like have a little, you know, every couple of weeks we would go down there and get some stuff and just stock it in the classroom, because otherwise he would just be sitting there with his lame, you know, whatever I sent him with that was
here's an apple while everyone else has a cupcake.
Here's some fruit snacks. Enjoy. So I understand like being willing to drive somewhere. But on the, you know, HDSA downtown side, whenever we have those little like destinations that people are coming for whatever the reason, it's an invitation for them to enjoy the rest of the town. So we appreciate that your community spills out into other areas.
And we always have our list of recommendations based on like what people want, like if they want a nicer place, or if they want something that's a little bit more chill, or if they want like a shop for specializing in this. Like most of the gals now are pretty great about having like recommended spots that we point people to, and it helps bring them down First Street as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. But given like how strong the your community is, across this area, you said you already had your eye out for a space in Snohomish even before the Spada thing came up. So what was it about Snohomish that you were like, oh, I want to be there?
Well, I mean, the honest answer is it's two-parted. One, like I truly did love the Snohomish community, and I do still. It is a really special place. I'm really grateful to be here. The second part of it being like, it was either going to be Snohomish or Seattle. Because both of our support systems were very loyal. Seattle rent was way too much. I couldn't afford it, especially as a single mom. Like this is like
still home rent or the brick and mortar rent?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Because I was a single mom. So like if I was going to have my place in Seattle, like I would need to live close by.
Right,
and then
right.
like that also means like where am I going to take my son if he's in preschool or whatnot? And so it was really like it was like those were my two options. Those were where I had built following, and I hadn't ever really kind of gotten a hold on the east side. And so it was between those two. And I liked the smaller town feel. Like I enjoyed living in Seattle. I lived in South Lake Union before South Lake Union boomed. And I loved it, but like wouldn't necessarily, for me, wasn't where I wanted to raise a kid.
Sure.
And so that is like what kept me here. And also because it's more of like I could afford it easier as a single mom. But it was that the whole like summer of 2020 was a little interesting in Snohomish. And it was an interesting time. And I was like, wonder how all this is going to pan out. But it was good. And even during like all the COVID stuff, it was very clear. Like that was a hard time as a small business owner.
I
like,
bet.
Man, that was a hard time. I don't wish that on anyone. But I feel like the community has really figured out how to come back together here.
Yes.
And I don't feel that. I mean, obviously, there's the outliers, right?
Sure.
Like, but
As
for
a
the
whole.
most part, as a whole, I don't feel that divisiveness anymore. And I'm really glad because I will say, like, our Seattle customers were surprised that given what was happening in Snohomish that summer, we're very surprised that we were opening up. And we had a lot of people that refused to come to the storefront for a solid year and a half.
Dang.
And now those people do come. Like,
I think it goes to show how narrative is important, and there was a lot of exposure. I mean, I wasn't in this job, thankfully. I'm grateful that someone else unfortunately had to deal with that. But the narrative is interesting because anytime that something is shared, if you're not there to experience it directly, and sometimes even if you are there to experience it directly, you just don't really understand what's actually happening. And I feel so bad that Snohomish, especially the downtown district, kind of had this like black mark for a bit because whatever the extreme thing is what people end up talking about. And then that kind of snowballs and people have these assumptions. And it's like what you said, where people wouldn't even come down to the storefront. But underneath that, too, I think is a real testament to this community that we do just keep showing up for each other and we keep doing what we know how to do best. And over time, that's what will win out. And I think that really, like, people might be compassionate about things here, and that can be misconstrued for one thing or another. And then there's always those who are going to come in and take advantage and kind of piggyback on that. But ultimately, people are passionate because they care so much about this place. Yeah. And I think when we do that well, and we just remember that that's the actual core that we all really care about, that's what ends up being the lasting testament to what our district actually is.
We just need to make sure next time we are funneling that passion into
positivity.
Positive.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of really cool businesses, both like in the historic Main Street area, but also just within like the tight-knit community of downtown Snohomish, a lot of businesses that did pull through. Yeah. And really have withstood that, and are standing pillars now for the community. Shout out, like, Radical Roots has been like another one that like really pulled through all of that.
It was not an easy time for anybody. And I don't think like Snohomish is, any special case in any situation really either, because every small business everywhere around the nation, around the world really was just having it was a hard time. But there was other things that were just happening socially that I think made it even harder. But I appreciate the resiliency of our community.
Yeah.
So Lauren, we've talked a lot about how strategic you've been. And I loved how you said, I might not know how to get to point B, but I know it's there and I'm going to figure it out. You are a very innovative person. And we actually awarded you this year with one of our core values at HDSA is innovation. And you received that award this year.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What did that mean to you, if anything?
Yes, no, of course it did.
And do you look at yourself as an innovator? Is that a word that you would have used to describe who you are?
Oh man, another loaded question. Yes, reflecting back on it now, yes, I'm like, okay, yes. Yeah, I agree with that. It took I was sitting with it and I'm like, yeah, they're right. I am an innovator. I have a hard time putting words to myself. And so would I have thought of that before then? Probably not, because I probably don't give myself enough credit. But looking back, yes, 100%. I loved how on the description card and when you guys came and awarded it to us and talked to me about it, the transparency education piece, especially I take so much pride and value and intention behind transparency and bringing the community together in that aspect that meant a lot. And I was very grateful that you guys recognized that and that it meant so much to you guys as well, because it means a lot to me, a whole heck of a lot to me. I always say I do this for the people. I do it for, to be honest, the staff comes first. And then I do it for our community. But because if it weren't for our staff, our incredible staff of amazing humans, there would be nothing to give the community because I sure as heck can't do it all myself. But I do it for both. And if it weren't for our staff or our incredible community backing us, there's not much else that drives me in that way. Yeah, I enjoy decorating cakes. I love putting flowers on cakes. Yeah, I enjoy assembling pot. I enjoy making a really, really awesome latte. But at the end of the day, the people are what drives me. And so recognizing that intention behind that was really cool to see and definitely put a smile on my face. Because we're trying to do it different and do it in a way that has kind of, to be honest, been pretty taboo in the industry or across the board with small businesses. It's such a taboo thing to talk about money and finances, personally or business wise. But why? Why is it?
I have theories.
We won't
do that today, though.
Oh man, I would
the next
love
episode
to.
of.
We need to have a separate off the mic conversation.
Yeah, part 2. But you guys as customers, you're using your money to buy the things that we're making, and it's so important. So to not go down that rabbit hole. I did really, really, and do appreciate that award, but the reason behind the award made a whole a lot more impact for me.
And that's why we have those values, is because all of them, everything that we do at HDSA comes down to people. We are a people-oriented organization that only exists because it's a people-oriented place. That is really what it's all about. In a community, it comes down to the people. And I think it gets kind of it masks itself sometimes as whatever else, business, events, historic buildings or whatever it is. But really, what are any of those things without the people? And so those who really kind of model our values, which so many people do. And I'm not saying that because you don't get an award, you don't, model the values. But everybody does it in different ways. And we really felt that your innovation was what shined the most, because you do things differently and it's noticeable. And I think when it does come down to your motivation is the people, and I love that you center your staff as well. That's what really is the impact that people feel. Masking is innovation, right? Or whatever it might be. You also applied for 2 grants from Main Street?
Yes.
And you won 2 grants, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that. So it's the Backing Small Business Main Street America Awards.
Yep.
And just to give the audience a little context, so there's Main Street America, which is an entire organization that has many different offerings. And one of the things they do is they partner with American Express and American Express offers these grants to small businesses through the Main Street America model. And then we have state Main Street programs, like the Washington State Main Street program, which is what HDSA is part of. So while they're not like totally interconnected organizationally, they are interconnected as far as the work that they do and recognition for the community that you're in and things like that. So you applied for and received the Main Street America grant 2 times. So tell me a little bit about what the application was like. What did you want to use the money for? What do you think they were recognizing you for? And how did you apply those funds?
Maybe next time, one question at a time.
I can't. All my questions are multi-layered.
So maybe first and foremost, how did you even hear about them?
Ooh. I don't remember how I heard about them, actually.
It could have come through us. I mean,
it could have come
we
through
share
you
those
guys.
things and every time they're available.
Yeah, I'm assuming it was maybe through you guys or potentially social media.
Sure.
I don't remember how I heard about them the first time, but I remember seeing it and going, this looks cool. Because the focus every year that I have looked at it, I did look at it the year prior, but like after the application deadline had passed. And then the year I applied and won. And then this last year, I also looked at it again just because I was curious if it changes. And it doesn't seem to change that much. Obviously, you have to be a Main Street business. But what are you doing for your community? And what is this grant going to do to help you with your community? And so that, to me, is where they're picking the winners. And based on who they picked, especially for the enhancement grant, the second grant. So the $10,000 grant was the first grant that you apply for. And Maple Moss also got one. Shout out to them. And I don't remember how I broke down the first one, but it is community focused. And so you don't need to have community impact for the first one. But if you are active in your community and can show and prove that through your application answers, and this was one of the most in-depth grant applications I've done. They're pretty darn in-depth. It definitely took several nights of like sitting and writing the answers and putting them together. In the first one, they don't pick as much on the community impact of the grant, but there needs to be community impact of the business in order to really kind of be in the forefront runners for the grant. So we got that one. Again, I kind of forgot the breakdown between the two because they ended up merging together the funds. And so then once you complete your usage of the first grant, then you can apply for the enhancement grant. If you complete your usage by X date, you can then apply with another second lengthy application for the second part of the grant, which was $25,000, I think, because I think it was $35,000 total. That one, though, there has to be direct. They say you don't have to have direct community impact, but it was very clear by the people that were chosen that there has to be direct impact of the grant on your community.
Sure.
And maybe that depends on how many people have direct impact that apply. Maybe that's where that comes from. But we have prioritized high quality goods coming in, high quality goods coming out, paying our staff really well, tipping everyone out. But that means that our products aren't always accessible to people in lower income brackets. That has always been on my mind. Unfortunately, with our business model and the importance for me of sourcing locally sourced, sustainably grown, organically certified, like fair trade, that doesn't come at a low cost, which means that if it's not a low cost coming in, it's for sure not a low cost going out. But that's always been on my mind of how do we get these allergen-friendly baked goods into the hands of people that can't afford them but need them.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we're here for the people. Like I'm here for the people the new customers that come in that are 60 years old and literally cry and are like, I haven't been able to eat bread in 30 years. Or I haven't had a croissant since I was a kid before I found out I was celiac.
Right.
Those are the people, like we do it for those people. We pride ourselves that everything tastes delicious, but we do it for those people. And so my big choice of impact after just sitting down with my husband and being like, I think this is what I want to focus the grant on, was a weekly donation to the Snohomish Food Bank.
Oh, wow.
So that was what we like, quote unquote, a big portion of those funds was dedicated to the first, I think we outlined the first 6 months of our food bank partnership was covered, being the cost of the goods to make them and the labor to make them were covered by the grant.
Wow.
So that we could get systems in place and kind of a buffer going to figure out how to keep this going. And now it's however long it's been since we got that grant, a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we're still going
in the summer,
strong.
I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we donate fresh baked, gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, plain scones so that people can use them for sweet or savory purposes directly to the food bank in Snohomish. They pick them up every Monday or every other Monday, depending on how many they go through in a week. And they're fresh baked, packed in packages of 4 in a compostable cellophane wrapper. And that grant allowed us to kickstart that program. So that was our big community impact focus. And there were some things that we had on there that kind of went along with that in order to get that going as far as tools and equipment.
Right.
And then we also had some upgrades that we included in there. We, prior to the grant, were cooking our sourdough in Dutch ovens in our Blodgett electric convection ovens. And it was a nightmare, to put it safe. Like transporting in a too small bakery that's operating over capacity and moving hot Dutch ovens. And it was not great.
Yeah.
So it allowed us to buy a bread oven. And so we have a bread oven in the bakery and have since the grant. And it allowed us to upgrade our grinders for our coffee beans that we had decent grinders, but they were finicky and we upgraded them. And then we had some signage upgrades that we did with it and had a portion of it also towards, it didn't cover all of it, but towards a big website overhaul. So that's what we used it for. But the most important aspect of it being, how do we make this accessible to the people that definitely can't afford this, but like this is our business model, but how do we get these into the hands of people that need it? So
it's another great example of your innovation because you're trying to fulfill a need, not just temporarily, but long term. And you have to build sustainable business practices in to be able to support that, which required, multiple layers of thinking. That was super smart.
You nice saw job. Your B and you're like, I'm going to get there one way or another.
Yes, exactly.
That was awesome.
It took trial and error and figuring out what systems worked. And now it's a well-oiled little process to get the fresh baked scones to the food bank. And
I do have one question. What is a bread oven versus a normal oven?
Yes. So a bread oven has literal stone plates instead of racks. I guess you could compare it to like a pizza oven, like a stone pizza oven. So the bread is being baked directly on stone. And so this is a 3-layer oven. We can fit 4 bowls or loaves of bread per rack, rack in quotes.
Sure.
But so it's really, really hot. And then we also have one that has steam injection, which is beautiful. Highly recommend. But we were like putting ice cubes in our Dutch ovens, and it was it was a mess. It was a hot, dangerous mess, and
very
literally hot, dangerous mess. So
it's
amazing. Beautiful, and we use and abuse our bread oven, and we love it, and we hope to get more in the future because they're wonderful.
Did you name it?
That one doesn't have a name. The other 3 do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like Fred. Fred is one of our ovens. We have 3 Blodgetts. And we love them and they're wonderful. But now that you say that, they didn't name the bread oven. I let the staff name things. They've named the 20 quart, the 40 quart, all 3 of the Blodgetts. But you're right. I guess
maybe
the bread
it's time
oven
for the bread oven.
Yeah, bread oven needs a name. Starter has a name.
That's funny.
Well, it's been amazing to hear your journey, like all the way from a cottage kitchen to this brick and mortar and whatever else you might have baking in the oven for us in the future.
Nice, Sheila.
That was nice. I agree.
Thank you. I pride myself. And as we've acknowledged, like this community is so here for you, and we're so excited to see what other stuff you will share with us in the future. So to wrap up all of this wonderful conversation, we do have one last question that we always ask all of our guests, which is, Describe your perfect day in Snohomish for us.
Oh, fun. Oh, I feel like this is like picking favorite.
Well, we always say grain.
Yeah,
so.
that is true. I'm sure it has come up multiple times.
My perfect day in Snohomish. It would definitely be sunny. I've lived here in Washington this is my 14th summer, and I have to say I'm still not a fan of the winter. So it would definitely be like a late May through September day.
Yeah, sure.
Sunny and warm, but I absolutely love what they have done with I call it the lawn, the park at Carnegie.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. Such a good call on the city. Wonderful investment. It is used every freaking day, even when it's rainy.
Yeah.
So it would definitely start out probably with a extra matcha from Grain and hang out over there with the kiddos. And where would I hit up for lunch? I am a huge fan of Pace Kitchen for dinner, so I would definitely go there for dinner. There's a couple shops I really love, like the Snapdoodle. So glad they came here. I feel like that was a really fun addition. Peaches is really fun. I love going in there. And there's a couple other really fun shops on First Street that I like. But honestly, for me, it would be hanging outside in the sun with my kids. But I almost always have a matcha in hand. So.
You brought one today?
That is,
yes,
very on brand.
I did.
Well, that sounds like a lovely day. And probably very similar to a lot of other people, going into Grain, hanging out at the Carnegie, just enjoying downtown.
Yeah.
And you're part of that. Thank you so much for everything that you bring to our community. And thanks for being here today and sharing your story with us. It was such a pleasure.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for being here.
Snohomish Storytellers, brought to you by the Historic Downtown Snohomish Association, produced by Red Trucks.